Hi everyone, so in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to crochet these cute little mice. So in this tutorial I'm going to go over how to make the body and the head and the ears, arms and legs, and how to sew all of the different parts together and then add the face. And if you'd like the written pattern for these mice, then I will leave a link to where you can find it in the description box below this video. And if you'd like to learn how to make their little dresses, so these dresses are optional, you don't have to make them, but instructions for the dresses are included on the written pattern. So for these mice you will need a 4mm crochet hook and DK weight yarn. So thank you very much for watching, and please make sure to subscribe to my channel for more crochet videos. So to begin the head of the mouse, you want to start off by making a magic circle. So to do a magic circle, take your yarn and take your finger and wrap the yarn around your finger once. And you then want to wrap the yarn back over your finger to make a cross like that. You then want to take your crochet hook and go underneath the first loop of the cross, and then using your crochet hook pick up the second loop of the cross and pull it through. And you can then take your finger out, and there we have a magic circle, and we are ready to begin round one. So to begin round one, you want to chain one, and this chain one does not count as a stitch, this just locks our magic circle into place. And now for round one, we are going to do 5 single crochets into the magic circle. So we're going to go down into the circle and yarn over and pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through both loops on your hook. So there we have 1 single crochet into the circle, and now we're going to do a second one in the exact same way, and then a third, and just keep going until you have 5. Like that. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 single crochets into the magic circle for round one. And now to finish off this round, we need to close up the circle. So to do that, you want to take this end or this tail here, and you simply want to pull this nice and tight, and that will close up the magic circle. And there we have finished round one, and we're ready to move on to round two. So we are now on to round two, and for this round we're just going to work 2 single crochets into every single stitch. So you want to go into the first stitch here from round one, and if you're not sure which stitch to go into, then you can count back 5 stitches. So count back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you want to go into this stitch and work your first single crochet. And now before you work your second single crochet into that stitch, you want to take a stitch marker, and if you don't have one of these, you can just use another piece of yarn in a different colour, and you want to place it into that first stitch that you just worked. So place it into the first stitch of round two. And now throughout our mouse, we're not going to be working any slip stitches at the end of the rounds, so we're just going to be working kind of in a big spiral. So you need to use a stitch marker to mark the first stitch of every round. And that way you will know when you reach the stitch marker again that you have reached the end of the round and we're ready to move on to the next one. So we will move the stitch marker with each round that we work. So there we have worked 1 single crochet into that stitch there, and now we're going to work a second single crochet down into the same stitch, and then you want to do 2 single crochets both into the next stitch, and then do 2 into the next, and keep doing this all the way around, 2 single crochets into each stitch. Come to the end of round 1, and I can tell that I have come to the end of the round as I have reached the stitch marker. And at the end of this round you should have 10 single crochets. And now we can move on to round 3. So to begin this round, remove your stitch marker, and we're going to start off by working 2 single crochets into this first stitch here. So go down into this stitch and work your first single crochet. And now, as this is the first stitch of round 3, we're going to take our stitch marker and place it into that stitch. So we are marking the first stitch of the round. And now we're going to go ahead and work a second single crochet back down into that same stitch there. And now we're going to do just 1 single crochet into the next stitch. And now you want to work 2 single crochets both into the next stitch, and then work 1 single crochet into the next. And you want to continue working this all the way around for round 3. You want to do 2 single crochets into 1 stitch, and then 1 single crochet into the next stitch, then 2 into the next and 1 into the next, all the way around. So keep working 2 1 2 1. So like that, so I have come to the end of round 3, and at the end of this round you should have 15 single crochets, and I can tell I have come to the end of the round as the next stitch here has the stitch marker in it. So now we can move on to round 4. So to begin this round, remove your stitch marker, and we're going to start off by working 2 single crochets into the first stitch here. So I'm going to work my first single crochet into that stitch, and then I'm going to place my stitch marker into that stitch as this is the first single crochet of round 4. And now we're going to work a second single crochet down into that same stitch. So there we have 2 single crochets into the first stitch, placing the stitch marker into the first one. And now we're going to work 1 single crochet into the next stitch, and then 1 into the next. So there we have done 2 1 1, and we're just going to keep repeating this all the way around. So do 2 single crochets both into the next stitch, and then do 1 into the next one and 1 into the next, and continue this for round 4. 2 1 1 2 1 1. I have finished round 4, and at the end of that round you should now have 20 single crochets. And now we can move on to round 5. So remove your stitch marker, and we're going to do 2 single crochets into the first stitch, placing the stitch marker into the first one that you work, like that. And now we're going to do 1 single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. So do 1 into the next one here, and then do 1 into the next one, and then do 1 into the next one. So there we have 2 1 1 1, and just continue to work this all the way around. So we're going to do 2 single crochets into the next stitch, and then 1 into 3, and continue this for round 5. I have finished working that all the way around for round 5, and at the end of this round you should have 25 single crochets, and I would definitely recommend that you just quickly go back and double check that you do have 25. So count 1 2 3 4 all the way around, and then the stitch that you have your stitch marker in should be number 25. And now we can move on to round 6. So for the next 4 rounds, so for rounds 6, 7, 8 and 9, so 4 rounds, we are just going to do 1 single crochet into every single stitch. So for each round we will remove our stitch marker and then work one single crochet into that first stitch, and then place your stitch marker into that single crochet to mark the first stitch of the round, and then we'll do one single crochet into every single stitch around, and then stop when you reach your stitch marker and move on to the next round, and then do that again. So remove your stitch marker, work one single crochet into the first stitch, place your stitch marker down into that first stitch of the new round, and do one single crochet into every single stitch around. And you should find that in each round you still have 25 single crochets. So you want to do that for 4 rounds. So for rounds 6, 7, 8 and 9. And on the written pattern I will have a chart at the very end where you can tick off each round that you do, because it's quite tricky. You can easily lose track of what round you're on, so either just jot it down on a piece of paper and tick it off as you go, or if you have the written pattern, I have a chart on there that you can just tick off. So work 4 rounds of plain single crochet. So we're going to start round 6, which is our first round. So remove your stitch marker, work one single crochet into the first stitch, place your stitch marker back down into that stitch like that. So we have marked the first stitch of round 6, that stitch we just worked there, and now I'm going to do one single crochet into the next stitch and one into the next, and continue this for 4 rounds. So there I have finished working those 4 rounds, so I have come to the end of round 9, and this is what you should have. So we have kind of the main part of the head finished now, and now we can move on to round 10, and round 10 is our first decrease round. So we're going to start off by working one single crochet into each of the first 3 stitches. So I have removed my stitch marker and I'm going to do one single crochet into 3 stitches, and I'm going to place a stitch marker into the first single crochet of the round. So it's always really important to remember to do that. So there we have 1, 2 and 3. And now over the next 2 stitches we are going to work 2 single crochets together. So when we do 2 single crochets together, we're working 2 single crochets, one into each stitch, but we're not going to complete either of them, and then we're going to complete them both together at the same time. So we are turning 2 stitches into 1. So you want to go down into this next stitch here, just as you would with a normal single crochet, and yarn over and pull up a loop. But you do not want to complete this single crochet. So normally we would yarn over and pull through these 2 loops here, but you do not want to do that. You want to stop here and leave this single crochet incomplete and move on to the next one. So go into the next stitch and yarn over and pull up a loop, just as you would with a normal single crochet. But we're not going to complete this single crochet either. So there we have 2 incomplete single crochets, and you should have 3 loops on your hook, and you want to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops to complete the stitch. So there we have done 2 single crochets together, and now we're going to do 3 more single crochets, or 1 single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. So there's 1 and 2 and 3, and now we're going to do 2 single crochets together again over the next 2 stitches. So go into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then go into the next stitch and bring up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. So there we have 2 more single crochets together. And we're going to keep repeating this all the way around for round 10. We're going to do 3 single crochets, then 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches, then 3 more single crochets, then 2 single crochets together all the way around. So there I have finished working that for round 10, and at the end of that round you should now have 20 stitches, and I would definitely recommend that you just quickly go back and double check that you do have 20 to make sure that you've done that correctly. So just count here along the tops, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way around, and you should have 20 stitches. And now we can move on to round 11, and round 11 is nice and easy. It's just a round of plain single crochet. So we're just going to work one single crochet into every single stitch. So remove your stitch marker and then go down into this first stitch here and do one single crochet, placing a stitch marker into the first stitch of the round, and then just do one single crochet into each and every stitch. Finished working that for round 11, and we should still have 20 stitches at the end of this round. And now we can move on to round 12. So to begin this round you want to remove your stitch marker, and we are going to start off by doing 6 single crochets, or one single crochet into each of the first 6 stitches. So go into the first stitch here and do one single crochet, placing the marker back into that stitch. And now you want to do one single crochet into each stitch until you have 6. Like that. And now we are going to work 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches. So work 2 single crochets together, and now do 1 single crochet into the next stitch, and we're going to repeat that 2 more times. So we're going to repeat 2 single crochets together and then 1 single crochet into the next stitch 2 more times. So do 2 single crochets together, and then do 1 single crochet into the next stitch, and now do that again. Do 2 single crochets together, and then do 1 single crochet into the next stitch. So you should find that you have done that set of stitches 3 times in total, and you should have 5 stitches left at the end of your round here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're going to finish off with 1 single crochet into each of these. So finish off round 12 with 1 single crochet into each of these 5 stitches. Like that. And now at the end of this round you should have 17 stitches. So if you count around the top here you should have 17 stitches. And now we can move on to round 13. So to begin this round we are going to do 4 single crochets. So remove your stitch marker and do 1 single crochet into each of the first 4 stitches, placing your stitch marker into the first one that you work. So like that. So there I have those 4 single crochets, and now we are going to do the same thing as we did for the middle of last round. We are going to do 2 single crochets together over 2 stitches, and then 1 single crochet into the next stitch 3 times for the middle of this round. So do 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches, and then do 1 single crochet into the next stitch. And now repeat that 2 times. like that. So we have done the same thing there as we did for the middle of last round, and you should now find that you have 4 stitches left at the end. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to finish off by doing 4 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And at the end of this round, so at the end of round 13, you should have 14 stitches. And now before we move on to the next round, we are going to add some stuffing to the head. So at the end of round 13 here, we are going to add some stuffing to the head, as we're just going to continue to close up the head, and this opening here is going to get quite small and it's going to be quite hard to get some stuffing to the back here. But before you add any stuffing, you need to make sure that this end or this tail here, from where you made your magic circle at the very start, has been pulled through to the outside. So you need to make sure that that's on the outside there. And now you can kind of pull your yarn out like this to make a big loop so it doesn't come undone. And then you can take your stitch marker out if you like. I'm going to actually, because sometimes these get caught up in the stuffing. And then you want to take some toy stuffing. So I am using polyester toy stuffing, and you want to add some to the head. So add some to the head like this, so like that. So there I have added some stuffing to the head. So this is what it should look like, and we're going to add some more as we go. And now we can move on to round 14. So to begin this round, you want to work 2 single crochets or 1 single crochet into each of the first 2 stitches. And remember to place a stitch marker into the first one that you worked. And it can be a little bit tricky to work now that we have stuffing in the head, but what I like to do is just kind of place my finger behind the stitch that I'm working in and then kind of push the stuffing down so that it doesn't get caught up in your stitches. So there we have 1 single crochet, and now I'm going to do 1 into the next stitch. So we have started off round 14 with 2 single crochets. And now we are going to do the same thing as we have been doing for our other rounds. In the middle of the rounds, we're going to do 2 single crochets together and then 1 single crochet into the next stitch 3 times for the middle of this round. So do 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches, and then 1 into the next stitch, 1 single crochet, and keep doing that until you have done that 3 times in total. So like that, and you should find that you have 3 stitches left. So we have 1, 2, 3, and we're going to do 1 single crochet into each of these. So there we have finished round 14, and at the end of this round you should have 11 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and now we can move on to round 15. So to begin this round we are going to do 4 single crochets or 1 single crochet into each of the first 4 stitches. So remove your stitch marker and do 4 single crochets to start. Like that. And now we are going to do 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches. So do 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches like that. And now we are going to do that again. So we are going to do a second set of 2 single crochets together. So do that over the next 2 stitches. And it does get a bit fiddly here when you come down to the bottom and you have your stitch marker. And now we're going to finish off by doing 3 single crochets, or 1 single crochet into each of the last 3 stitches like that. And now at the end of this round, so at the end of round 15, you should have 9 stitches around, and we're going to go ahead and add some more stuffing to the head. So you want to add stuffing to those last few rounds that you just worked, so I'll do that now. So there we have added some stuffing to those last few rounds, and now we can move on to round 16, and this is the final round of the head. And this round is really easy. We are just going to do 2 single crochets together all the way around, and you should find that you do that 4 times for this round. So we're going to do 2 single crochets together over these next 2 stitches here. And like I said, this can always be just a little bit fiddly when you are down at the bottom here. And then I'm going to place a stitch marker into that stitch, and now I'm going to do 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches. And I kind of like to pull my yarn tight so that I get really tight tension down the bottom here. So there I have a second set of 2 single crochets together, and then I'm going to do that for a 3rd time. And now I'm going to do that for a 4th time, and do just be patient when working at the end here, as it can be a little bit tricky, like that. So there we have done 2 single crochets together all the way around, and you should find that you have 1 stitch left here at the end of the round, and we're just going to leave that stitch empty. So we're not going to work into that stitch. So now you can pull your yarn out like this. So pull your yarn out and your hook and remove your stitch marker. And you want to cut your yarn now, so fasten off, leaving a nice long tail, as we can use this to sew up the end of the head. So here I have my scissors, and I'm going to cut this yarn, leaving a nice long end like I said, and then I'm going to pull that through. And now we're going to add a final little bit of stuffing to the head, so just a little bit into that last round or 2. I have added a little bit more stuffing, and it can be pretty hard to add it to these last few rounds at the end, but I just kind of like to use the end of my crochet hook to get it down in there. So once you have done that and you have fastened off, we are now going to sew up the end of the head here. So to do that, we're going to use a yarn needle, so weave that long end that you just left through a yarn needle, and we are going to go in and out of these stitches at the end of the head here to sew them together. So what you want to do is you want to go into this next stitch here, and we are going to go from the inside out like that, and you want to pull this through. And now we're going to go into the next stitch, and we're going to go from the outside in and go through, and then we're going to go into the next stitch from the inside out, and then we're going to go into the next stitch from the outside in, and then we're going to go into this last stitch here, so the 5th one, from the inside out. And now to close it up, all you have to do is, and make sure you've added your stuffing, is pull this tight, and that will close up that end. And there we have finished our little mouse's head. So this is what it looks like. So you can see the top here kind of dips in, and then the bottom should be flat. So the bottom's flat, and then the top kind of dips in like this. And then you need to make sure that you sew this end nice and securely in at the back, and make sure that you pull it tight before you sew it in, otherwise the magic circle will come undone. So pull it tight, weave it in nice and securely, and then I kind of like to go in through the head, out somewhere else, pull it tight and cut it, and then that end will bounce back into the inside of the head and stay nice and secure. And that's how I like to sew all of my ends in when making these little animals. So there we have finished our mouse's head, and now we can move on to the body. So we can now move on to making the body, and rounds 1 to 5 of the body are exactly the same as rounds 1 to 5 of the head. So you can go back in the tutorial and re-watch those rounds as many times as you need to, but you basically want to start off by doing a magic circle, then chaining 1, and then for round 1 you want to do 5 single crochets into the magic circle. Then round 2, do 2 single crochets into each stitch. Then round 3, do 2 single crochets into one stitch and 1 single crochet into the next stitch all the way around. Then round 4, do 2 single crochets into one stitch and 1 single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches all the way around. And then for round 5, you do 2 single crochets into one stitch and 1 single crochet into 3 stitches, and repeat that all the way around. So rounds 1 to 5 of the body are exactly the same as rounds 1 to 5 of the head. And like I said, you can go back in the tutorial and re-watch those rounds, or if you have the written pattern, they're all written down nice and clearly on there. So I have come to the end of round 5 of the body, and this is what you should have. And at the end of this round, you should have 25 single crochets. And now we can move on to round 6. So to begin this round, you want to remove your stitch marker, and we're going to start off by doing 2 single crochets into this first stitch, placing the stitch marker into the first single crochet of the round. Like that. And now we're going to do 1 single crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. So do 1 into this next one here, and 1 into the next, and the third one along, and the fourth. So there we have 2 single crochets into one stitch and then 1 into 4 stitches, and we're going to keep repeating this all the way around for round 6. So we're going to do 2 1 1 1 1 2 1 1 1 1 all the way around. So I have finished working that for round 6 of the body, and at the end of that round you should find that you have 30 single crochets, and I would definitely recommend that you just quickly go back and double check that you do have 30, and if you do, we can move on to the next round. So for the next 4 rounds of the body, so for rounds 7, 8, 9 and 10, so 4 rounds, you just want to do 1 single crochet into every single stitch. So we did a very similar thing for the head, so we're going to do 4 rounds of 1 single crochet into every single stitch. So you want to remove your stitch marker and then work 1 single crochet into the first stitch here, and then place your stitch marker back down into that first stitch to mark the first stitch of that round, and then do 1 single crochet into the next stitch and 1 into the next, and keep working this all the way around, and then when you reach your stitch marker you know it's time to move on to the next round, and then you want to do that 3 more times. So we're doing 4 rounds of 1 single crochet into each stitch, and that will take you to the end of round 10, and in each round you should find that you still have 30 stitches, so keep repeating that. So I have finished working those 4 rounds, so I have come to the end of round 10. So this is what you should have at the end of those rounds. And now we can move on to round 11. So to begin this round, you want to remove your stitch marker, and we're going to start off by doing 1 single crochet into each of the first 4 stitches. So I'm going to work 1 into this first stitch here, placing my stitch marker back down into that stitch, and then work 1 into the next stitch and the third one along, and then the 4th stitch, like that. So we've started off with 4 single crochets, 1 into each stitch, and now we are going to work 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches. So this is the same stitch that we did in the head. So what we're doing is we're working 2 single crochets, not completing either of them, and then completing them both together at the same time. So I'm going to do 1 incomplete single crochet into the next stitch, and then I'm going to do an incomplete single crochet into the next stitch and yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So there we have worked 2 single crochets together, and we're going to keep repeating this all the way around for round 11. We're going to do 1 single crochet into 4 stitches and then 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches, again and again and again. So I'm going to do 4 single crochets, and now do 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches. And just keep repeating that for this round. So there I have finished working that for round 11, and at the end of that round you should have 25 stitches. And now we can move on to round 12, and round 12 is a nice easy round of just plain single crochet. So we're just going to work 1 single crochet into every single stitch. So remove your stitch marker, work 1 single crochet into the first stitch, place the stitch marker into that one, and now just do 1 single crochet into every single stitch around, and you should find that you work 25 single crochets. So I have finished working that for round 12, and this is what you should have at the end of that round. So you can see that we are starting to decrease for the top of the body. So now we can move on to round 13, and round 13 is another decrease round. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 1 single crochet into 3 stitches and then 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches, and we're going to repeat that all the way around. So remove your stitch marker and start off by doing 1 single crochet into 3 stitches. And now work 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches. And just keep working that all the way around for round 13. I have finished working that all the way around for round 13, and at the end of that round you should have 20 stitches. And now we can move on to round 14, and round 14 is another round of just 1 single crochet into every single stitch. So you want to do 1 single crochet into each stitch around, and you should find that you work 20 single crochets in that round. So go ahead and do that. So like that, so I have finished working that for round 14, and like I said, in that round you should have worked 20 single crochets, and now we can move on to round 15, and this is the second to last round of the body. And what we're going to do is remove our stitch marker, and this is another decrease round, and in this round we're going to do 1 single crochet into 2 stitches, and then 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches. So do 1 single crochet into each of the first 2 stitches, like that, and now work 2 single crochets together over the next 2. So work 2 single crochets together, and just continue to repeat that all the way around for round 15. So we're doing 1 1 2 single crochets together, 1 1 2 single crochets together all the way around. So there I have finished round 15, and at the end of that round you should now have 15 stitches. And when I got to the end of that round, I went ahead and added some stuffing to the body, and before you add the stuffing, in the same way as the head, you need to make sure that you pull this tail from where you made the magic circle at the beginning through to the outside, and then you want to go ahead and add some stuffing, and you need the body to be pretty firm as this needs to support the head. So try to make this, I would say, the firmest part of the mouse. And then once you have done that, we can move on to round 16, and this is the final round of the body. So what we're going to do is remove the stitch marker, and in this round we're going to do 1 single crochet into 1 stitch, and then 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches all the way around. So we're doing 1 2 together, 1 2 together all the way around for round 16. So work 1 single crochet into the first stitch, placing the stitch marker into this stitch, and now work 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches, like that, and just continue to repeat that for round 16. So I have come to the end of round 16, and we have finished the body. So you should have 10 stitches at the end of this round. So what you want to do now is fasten off, so cut your yarn, which I have just done, and then pull it through. And when you cut the yarn, make sure that you leave a nice long end, as you can use this to sew up the top of the body and then attach the head and the body together. So leave a nice long end, and then you want to go ahead and add some more stuffing to the body, so just into that last round. And now you want to do the same thing as we did to close up the top of the head. So what we're going to do is weave this long end through a yarn needle, and we're going to go in and out of all of these stitches around the top to sew it up. So I'm going to go in from the inside out into this next stitch here and pull the yarn through. Then I'm going to go from the outside in and go through. Then I'm going to go from the inside out through the next stitch. Then from the outside in. Then from the inside out. And I'm going to do this all the way around. Like that, and then simply pull this end nice and tight, and that will close up the top of the head like that. And then I like to kind of come in and go across to the opposite side just to secure that end and close up that top a little bit more. So pull that together and go in and out and make sure this is nice and secure. And then I would not fasten this end off, as you can use this to sew the head to the body. So there we have finished the body. So we have the body and the head. So when you put them together like this, you can see we are getting our little mouse. And now we're going to move on and make the ears. So we can now move on to make our mouse's ears. And we're going to start off by doing a magic circle, as we did at the beginning of the head and the body. And we have chained 1 to lock that magic circle into place, but that chain 1 does not count as a stitch. And we are going to start off with round 1, and we're going to do 6 single crochets into the magic circle. So work 6 single crochets into the magic circle for round 1 of the ears. So like that. And now to finish off round 1, you need to pull this end tight to close up the magic circle. And now we can move on to round 2. So round 2 is really easy. We're just going to do 2 single crochets into every single stitch. So here we have our first stitch from round 1, and if you're not sure which stitch to go into, then count back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, go into this stitch, and we're going to do our first single crochet and then place a stitch marker into that stitch like that. So I have placed a stitch marker into the first stitch of round 2, and now we're going to work a second single crochet down into that same stitch. And now you want to do 2 single crochets both into the next stitch, and then 2 into the next, and continue this for round 2. You're working 2 single crochets into each and every stitch. So there we have come to the end of round 2 of the ears, and at the end of this round you should have 12 single crochets, and I would recommend that you just quickly go back and double check that you do have 12, and if you do, we can move on to round 3. So for the last 3 rounds of the ears, so there are only 5 rounds in the ears, so we have done rounds 1 and 2, and for the last 3 rounds, rounds 3, 4 and 5, we're just going to do 1 single crochet into each stitch. So we're doing 3 rounds of plain single crochet, and you should find that you work 12 single crochets in each of those rounds. So we're going to remove our stitch marker, work 1 single crochet into the first stitch, place the stitch marker into that stitch to mark the first stitch of round 3, and now just do 1 single crochet into every single stitch, and when you reach the stitch marker, you know you have come to the end of the round, and then you want to do that 2 more times. So work 3 rounds of plain single crochet. So I have finished working the ear, so I have come to the end of round 5, so I did those 3 rounds of 1 single crochet into each stitch. And now when you come to the end of your ear like this, you want to fasten off, leaving a nice long tail end, as we can use this to sew up the ear and then also attach it to the head. So now you want to take a yarn needle, and we're going to weave this through the long end through the yarn needle. And we are going to sew up the ear using the whip stitch. So what we're going to do is come in like this to the stitch on the opposite side. So you want to fold the ear in half and then come over like this through to the stitch on the opposite side. And now we're going to go into the next stitch and through to the same stitch on the opposite side and pull it through, and then with the whip stitch you always come back round to the same side here. So come back around to this side, go through the next stitch and the same stitch on the opposite side and go through, then come back around to this side here and go through the next 2 stitches, then come back around to this side and go through the next 2, and then the last stitch at the end here. So there we have sewn up that ear using the whip stitch like that. So there we have worked the whip stitch all the way along and we have finished that ear. And then as far as this end at the top goes, you need to make sure that you pull it nice and tight so that you close up the magic circle. And then I just like to weave it into the mouse once everything has been sewn together. So there we have finished our first little ear, and now you want to go ahead and make a second one in the exact same way. So you will need 2 ears, and then once you have done that, we can move on to the arms. So to begin the arms, you want to start off by making a magic circle and then chain 1. So it's the exact same thing as we did at the start of the head, body and ears. And we are going to begin with 5 single crochets into the magic circle. So round 1 is 5 single crochets into the magic circle. And then you want to close up the magic circle by pulling the end nice and tight. So there we have done round 1 of the arms, and now we can move on to round 2. So round 2 is really easy. We're just going to do 1 single crochet into every single stitch. So in round 2 we are also working 5 stitches, and now this can be pretty fiddly to do, it can be quite tricky. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into this first stitch here. So this is the first single crochet that we worked in round 1, and work 1 single crochet. And now place your stitch marker into that stitch to mark the first stitch of round 2. And now do 1 single crochet into the next stitch. And the third one along. And the fourth. And the fifth. So we're doing 1 single crochet into each stitch for round 2, like that. And now for the rest of the arms, we're just going to keep repeating that round. We're just going to keep repeating round 2. So our arms are not getting any wider or any bigger. We're just going up in a straight line. So you just want to keep repeating round 2. And we are going to repeat that 10 times. So we have round 1 where we worked 5 single crochets into the magic circle, and then round 2 up to round 12, so 11 rounds in total, are just rounds of 1 single crochet into each stitch. So we have done round 2, so now we're going to do round 3. So remove the stitch marker and work 1 single crochet into each stitch. And where this gets a little bit tricky is you will actually need to turn this inside out. So if you can see, it's kind of coming up on itself, and what you need to do is you need to kind of pop this out or turn this the right way around so that the right side of the stitches are on the outside. So the way that I have found is easiest to do this is to come down here, place your hook in through the magic circle, and then get this end from the magic circle and pull this up here. So you're going to pull that up so that that's on the outside, and now you can just kind of flip the work over, and it is tricky as it is so small, and especially as I have really tight tension, it can be extra tricky, but just kind of flip it like this, like that. And now we have the right side of the stitches facing the outside, and the more round you do, the more that will become clear. So just continue to work that for round 3. So like that. So I have worked round 3, so I just did 1 single crochet into each stitch, and just keep going, keep working rounds of 1 single crochet into every stitch until you get to the end of round 12. So there we have done 3 rounds. So keep going until you have 12 rounds in total. And if you have the written pattern, I have a little checklist at the end that you can tick off as you go to make sure you know what round you're on. So you can tick off each round as you finish it so that you don't lose track. So I have finished working all of those rounds for the arms. So I came to the end of round 12. And then when I got to the end, I fastened off, so pulled my yarn out and my hook, leaving a nice long tail. And you do not want to add any stuffing to the arm, so we don't have any stuffing in the arm. And then I finished off the arm by working the whip stitch along the top, so just like we did with the ears. So there we have finished the first arm, and you want to go ahead and make the second arm in the exact same way. So you need 2 arms, and these are both made up of 12 rounds like that. So there I have my arms. And now once you have finished making your arms, you now want to make the legs. And the legs are made in the exact same way as the arms. They are just longer. So the arms are made up of 12 rounds, like I said, and the legs are made up of 16 rounds. So you just want to keep working those rounds of 1 single crochet into each stitch until you get to the end of round 16 for the legs. And you could make the legs as long as you like. You could do 17, 18, 19, 20 rounds, or you could make them the same length as the arms if you like, but I worked 16 rounds for mine. So here we have the arms, and then here we have the longer legs. So you want to do the exact same thing, and you can go back in the tutorial and re-watch those rounds for the arms as many times as you need to. So do that for the legs, or if you have the written pattern, it's all written down nice and clearly on there. And then once you have done that, we have finished all of the parts of our mouse. So we have a body, head, 2 arms, 2 legs and 2 ears, and now we can sew them all together. So to sew your mouse together, you will need a yarn needle or a tapestry needle like this, and we're going to use the ends that we left once we had finished all of our different pieces to sew them together. And now there are lots of different ways that you can join your mouse, but the way that I like to do it is I like to start off by sewing the arms to the body, and then I sew the head on top of the body and the arms, and then I add the ears, and then I finish off by adding the legs. So we're going to start off by sewing the arms, or the first arm, to the body. So here we have our body, and kind of the wider bit down the bottom is the bottom here where we made our magic circle, and then this is the top. And I'm going to start off by taking one of my arms, so I'm going to go to the top here where I worked the whip stitch along the top, and I'm going to thread this end through my yarn needle and then place it where I want it on the body. So kind of come up here like that in the center, and then you simply want to go through the arm, then into the body, then back through the arm and back through the body, and just do that until you get to the end. So I'm going to come through the arm here and then into the body and go through like this and pull it through, and then I'm going to make sure that that lines up and that's where I want it, and then come back around here and go in through the next stitch and then through the body again and go through, and do this all the way along. So like that. So I went all the way along, and then I went back, and you can see that has attached the arm to the body. And now you want to weave this end nice and securely into your work, and then you want to attach the other arm in the exact same way, and then you want to use the same method to attach the head to the top. And it's really important to get the position of the head right. So the bottom here is flat, and then the top has this dip like this. So when you're sewing the head on, make sure that you have the flat part on the bottom and then the curved part on the top, and you just want to use this tail end here and go in through the body and the head and the body and the head. So then once you have sewn the arms and head on, then you want to add the ears. And if you have a look at my mouse here, this is where I have positioned mine. So my ears are kind of on the side of the head to give it that mouse look. So I have sewn mine 5 rows in from the back, and then I have 7 stitches in between them at the top. So here I have the head, and this would be sewn onto the body, and I can count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then place my ear and sew it onto the side here, and then have 7 stitches in the middle, and then sew the other one onto the opposite side. And then you want to finish off by sewing the legs on, and I like to sew the legs quite far apart as that makes it much easier for them to sit down. So you can sew the legs on wherever you like, but I like having mine quite far apart because then they can sit down. So if you wanted to put them on a bed, or if you had a little shelf in a nursery, you could have the little mouse sat down leaning up against the wall. So you can sew them whatever way you like, but I like to sew mine quite far apart. And then once you have sewn all of your little mouse together and you have weaved all of your ends in nice and securely, you now want to add the face, and I will show you how to do that now. So I would recommend adding the face right at the end once your mouse is all sewn together, and that way you can make sure that the positioning of the eyes and the nose is correct. So I haven't sewn mine together just yet, but for the sake of this tutorial I can still show you the face on this head. So what we're going to do is start off by adding the eyes. So you can see here we have the 2 little eyes, and it is really difficult to get them even just because of the way that the stitches are in this pattern, but just try to get them along the same line here, and then they will look fine once you weave all the ends in. So here, this is our head here, and we have the top of the head with a curve, and I'm going to add the eye, the first eye here. So you want to go in through 1 stitch and out through the next, and you need to be really careful that you're not picking up any stuffing. So I'm just making sure that I'm not getting any stuffing when I go in through that stitch. And then you want to come through, and I am using just a scrap piece of brown yarn here, but you can use brown or black, whatever you like. And then you want to come back around to this side, and we're going to go over that stitch again. So come in through that same space and out again and pull through. And now I'm going to do that one more time. So I'm going to come in through that stitch again, but I'm going to go out somewhere else in the head, so somewhere far away, and then pull that yarn through like that. And there we have added that eye, and if you wanted a bigger eye then you could do that one more time, so you could go around it a 3rd time, but I like going around that stitch twice. And then with your needle you want to come down into this stitch here down at the bottom and come out somewhere else in the head, and then thread that through the loop and go through. And then you want to weave these ends nice and securely into the inside of the head. So there we have added our first eye, and then you want to add the second one, and you can see I have 3 stitches in between my eyes here. And now we're going to add the nose. So for the nose you want to come right to the edge here, and we're using the same method. We're going in through one side and then out through the other, making sure that you're not picking up any stuffing. And then you want to, I'm actually going to go up a bit further, so in through that stitch and out through the opposite side, and then you want to come through like that with a scrap piece of yarn, leaving a little end, and then come back around, go in through the same stitch and out through the same stitch again and go through, and then do that again, go in through the same stitch and out through the same one on the opposite side. Just keep doing this 3 or 4 times until you have the size nose that you like this, and then you want to weave that end in the same way. Go in through the stitch and come out somewhere else, and then pull the yarn tight and cut it off. And then once you have done that, we have finished our little mouse. And now, like I said at the beginning of this video, if you would like to learn how to make the dress, then there are really clear written instructions on the written pattern, and there will be a link to the written pattern in the description box below this video. So that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and found it easy to follow. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel for more crochet videos. And in the description box below this video, I will leave a link to the written pattern, and I will also leave links to my Instagram and Twitter accounts. So I always like to post updates and pictures on there, especially Instagram, and I would love to see photos of your crochet work on there as well. And thank you again for watching. Bye!